If you've been scrolling through endless lists of sewing machines, comparing motor speeds, stitch counts, and price tags, and you still can't tell which one actually makes sense for your workshop, this review is here to clear that up. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon. I've spent the last few weeks digging into the Juki 2010q, talking to a couple of small business seamstresses, reading forum threads, and watching a few YouTube builds, so what you hear isn't just a read off the spec sheet, it's what real people are saying about using it day to day. First off, the Juki 2010q sits in a sweet spot that most hobbyists never even consider. It's a semi-industrial machine that promises high-speed quilting without the industrial price tag of a full-scale factory floor model. That sounds great on paper, but the real question is whether the speed and features translate into a smoother workflow for someone who splits time between home projects and occasional small batch orders. In practice, the machine's 6,000 stitches per minute rating feels noticeable when you're quilting a large duvet or running a quick repeat on a shirt. The fabric moves through the throat with barely any chatter, which means you can finish a 40-inch quilt block in half the time you'd spend on a domestic-grade machine. Who should buy this? If you're a serious hobbyist who has outgrown a basic home sewing machine, someone who does at least a few projects a week, regularly quilts larger pieces, or runs a small Etsy shop, this is a solid upgrade. The 2010q gives you the headroom to experiment with heavier fabrics like denim or leather without constantly worrying about skipping stitches or motor strain. It also appeals to budding designers who need a reliable workhorse for sample production. The machine's ability to maintain consistent tension across a range of thread weights reduces the trial and error that typically eats up design time. On the flip side, if you stitch once a month, stick to light cottons, or are primarily interested in decorative embroidery, you'll likely find the 2010q overkill. The machine's size, about the footprint of a compact desktop printer, means you'll need a dedicated work surface, and that can be a deal-breaker for someone working out of a cramped apartment. Also, the learning curve is a bit steeper than a typical home model. You'll spend a few evenings learning the foot pedal nuances and threading the larger needle bar before you feel truly comfortable. Let's talk about the practical strengths that matter after you've opened the box. The first thing you notice is the metal frame. It isn't just a sturdy chassis, it actually dampens vibration when you hit that high speed, so the whole unit feels surprisingly stable even when you crank the motor. That stability translates directly into fewer thread breaks, which is a massive time saver when you're stitching through multiple layers of batting. The machine also comes with a built-in needle threader that works with both standard and heavy-duty needles, which eliminates the classic struggle of fiddling with a tiny eye while your hands are already messy from fabric glue or dust. Another practical win is the quick-change bobbin system. In my conversations with a quilting collective, members highlighted how much they appreciated being able to drop a fresh bobbin in without having to disassemble the whole mechanism. That means less downtime during long runs and fewer chances of missing a bobbin that's been sitting for a while. The large throat space, around 16 inches, lets you feed wide fabric pieces without constantly adjusting the guides. For a quilt block that's 15 by 15 inches, you can set it up and let the machine do the work without constantly repositioning the material. Now for some of the less obvious trade-offs. The machine speed is a double-edged sword. If you're not accustomed to managing the fabric feed at 6,000 stitches per minute, you might end up with puckering or uneven seam allowances simply because the material can outpace your tactile feedback. In real-world terms, a beginner who tries to rush a delicate lace pattern on the high-speed setting will quickly learn that slower speeds are essential for fine detail work. The machine does have a speed dial, but it's not as intuitive as a simple low-high switch. You have to get used to the incremental adjustments. Another point to consider is the lack of an integrated needle position display. While many high-end domestic machines show you exactly where the needle is in relation to the fabric, the 2010q relies on a more traditional viewfinder. That's fine if you're comfortable watching the needle's eye, but it can be a hiccup for those who prefer a digital readout. In practice, a few users reported that the learning curve around this feature added an extra 1,015 minutes to their setup time each session, which isn't huge but is noticeable when you're on a deadline. Maintenance is also worth mentioning. Semi-industrial machines generally require periodic oiling and occasional belt checks, and the 2010q follows that script. If you're coming from a fully electric home model that never asked for oil, you'll need to schedule a short maintenance window every few weeks. The